listeners and now viewers with this modern technology that I don't understand, but viewers and listeners, the big interview is blessed today to have somebody who led a very good club and international career and is now, from my perspective, doing very startling things in a football broadcasting career. We've got Jan Age Fjortoft with us today. Jan, first of all, thank you for joining us from the local library, or is this your professorial department in the university? It's very impressive indeed.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. And now I'm in my, like a lot of other people around the world, I'm in my home office. And since I started with my football career, I collected books. So over the years, I got too many, so I've given a lot away, but I still got some of them behind me.
Well, listen, this is me already butterfly mind. I had a very specific question to begin with, but do you find that having a book in your hand, like for example, I'm of an age that when I once went for a production interview at Arsenal, we had Santi Cazorla and Diaby and the young defender, Jenkinson, I think he was, who could play for Finland. We showed them, they had to pick out LP covers and they had their names on them and they had to file through it, and it was for B-roll. And at the end, it looked really good, and they all did this and they looked at it. And at the end, just a little instinct said to me, I said to these guys, do you know what those are? And they didn't know what vinyl was. They didn't know what an LP was. They'd never experienced it. We're now in an era where you and I covet books, and to have a book and to open it, hold it, and put a place mark in it. But all the kids are reading on their mobile phone or they're reading on their iPads, and books are less in fashion. What does a book make you feel, apart from the quality of the writing? Are books as physical objects things you love, and are they important to you?
When I played football until we got the iPhone, I was a great book reader. I read a lot of books. I always had books with me. I still do. I don't often open them anymore. So the last half year, I wanted to take that up again. And it's I see my kids as well now. They are part of friends who say they're going to read so and so many books during a year. My oldest daughter, she got unbelievable ambitions to do that, and I thought I should start as well to kind of do that again. I think what a book does to you is nowadays it's very important, because when you're on the iPhone, it's no problem to kill 2 hours on an iPhone. There's so many ways, and there's so many languages. I mean, I can do my German thing, I can do my English and the Norwegian thing, so I can go all the way. But I think that when you get a book that kind of takes you, when you just can't, and it's an old cliche, but if you can't let the book go away from you, a book is unbelievable. So I'm up to 2 now. So and we're only 15th of January, so I'm doing okay at home.
When you were a player and you always had a book, what types of things were you reading? And in the clubs where you were formed as you were coming through, did you have to be careful about what types of book other guys saw you reading? Because certainly in the British culture, it was not a good thing to be caught reading a book or a big newspaper. What about for you?
No, it's a good question, because I think there is a lot of things that there are some myths around football players. Some of the true, some are not true. But yeah, absolutely. I didn't have a lot of players that I could discuss for example, my historical books that I read. I'm a political nerd. So if I would do a quiz and I had to choose between football and politics, I would go for politics. And I've always read books. And when I came, for example, to Austria when I was 22, it was all about try to understand, first of all, Austrian football, and then the Austrian history. I'm also a guy who is very hungry after all the information is around Second World War. So Austria was not the worst place to stay, of course. But we know about that there were some football players that had trouble. I remember I read an article about Graham Lesaux had a problem with that, and there was things going around, bad things going around him, and things like that. But to ask me which books I like to read, I'm like a lot of people. I start with the easy ones. I would then start with biographies that kind of inspired me going into inspire me what these persons had done. But I also had my share of football books, but I'm a bit off that now. I don't read. The last football book I read, which was more the leadership, was from Sir Alex Ferguson. The last book he had, I think that was very interesting to see how he took this experience from his football life and took that into kind of a business context. I think that was very interesting. The last book I read now, two last books I've read now, is one biography about Maxwell, the media mogul who disappeared. That was interesting. Yeah, it was interesting to see how he kind of ruined his life and people around him. And another book about Norwegians who's been in the service of KGB. So that is my two last books.
What if you're a political nerd, then either then or now, which political figure? We live in an age where politics is now a dirty word when it shouldn't be. Politics is not seen as an area where you go into to better your society, your community, or your country. It's often, not always, seen as a way to get ahead, to get fame, and in our country, I can't for a second speak about Norway, but in Britain, particularly in London, it's now a way to put your nose in the trough. But I guess you don't simply read political biographies of those who failed or cheated. I guess you've come across biographies that have utterly inspired you. So which, if you had to have a dinner table and from your reading, you could pick 4 political figures who genuinely have inspired you, would you have 4, or have I asked too much?
Well, first of all, I think it's interesting the topics that you discuss, because yes, you have books that inspire you, but it's also important to make good analysis, is to understand people that you don't agree with. And there is a lot of people now saying that this is truth, and there is a exclusivity on truth, as a lot of people would have. So I don't support the line to only listen to the people that I agree with. I look for literature. I look to understand more people that I don't agree with. I think that is much more interesting, because the guys who have the same opinions like me, well, I know them. That's like myself. So that is interesting. I think it's also interesting to see from different countries what kind of political guys or types you bring in. And it was Winston Churchill who said that democracy is bad, but if you compare it with all other governing systems, it's not bad. This is the best we have. And I think that is rightly so, to understand. And if I put myself in an interview situation, I would much rather interview someone that I disagree big time to understand what it's all about. And I give an example, a silly example, without forgetting what you asked me about, because the Iranian president said many years ago, he said the Holocaust never happened, okay, and it made big news all around the world, okay. So the Spiegel, which is a big German magazine, as you maybe know, one of the biggest in Europe, they had an interview with this Iranian president. And the Spiegel is quite interesting. It comes from Germany, and they're the ones responsible for the Holocaust, of course. And they asked him why. And that was one of the most interesting interviews I read. I 100% disagree with him, but it was interesting where he came from. And he said, for example, why did I say that? He said, yeah, because if it was true that the Holocaust happened, why weren't the Europeans punished after the Second World War? Why did we punish all other cultures? Again, interesting perspective from his point of view, and you kind of stand where you sit in all those kind of things. But I think that it's very interesting to see people that I 100% disagree with. And one of the reasons I'm, for example, interested in the Second World War, yes, I can read all the heroes, the stories of the heroes, great interest. Some of these guys have been fortunate, the Norwegian war heroes that was part and was in UK during the Second World War, I've been able to call friends at the end of their lives. But still, it's very interesting also to understand what kind of created that kind of system out from Germany, starting with the First World War, starting with a Hitler who kind of felt that Germany was so bad treated in the First World War. So those are the things that kind of swirl me around my head. So I would be afraid to say which 4 or 5 I would have around around the table. I would certainly have Nelson Mandela there, and not because he was at the end he was one of the most famous people on the earth, but his way of forgiving. I would have him there. I would also have Mikhail Gorbachev, communist that made perestroika and glasnost and everything possible. So I would start there, and then I would build around there with people that that Angela Merkel, I would absolutely put there. Angela Merkel, who has over the years started her political career when she was 35 and so on. So these are more the figures I would look for.
There'd be no place for Quisling there.
Interesting, Quisling, because I could have used him, because I spent a lot of time how Norway could create a monster. For those of you don't understand Quisling was a big traitor who is now the most, what is a word in English dictionary as a traitor. And there is a great cartoon because Quisling visited Hitler many times, and he came to the door and the cartoon said, "I am Quisling," and they say, "Yes, we know, but what's your name?" So it's interesting to see how a monster, and yes, you have to call them a monster, how that could be built in a quite small, cozy country as Norway. I think that is very interesting. I read a lot about Vidkun Quisling.
Is it a cozy country? Because geographically, in the time that you're so interested in around the World War, it was of such significance that there was a big battle over it. Over our lifetimes, whether you want to call it the Soviet Union or Russia, it is close enough to be intimidating. And I wonder if it is it's easy to, for you are so culturally open, and you spent so much time in the country that Neil and Martin and I grew up in. You're aware of the immediate stereotypes we have of Norway. And some of us know a lot about Norway. And I played football with a lot of Norwegians at uni because they came to study civil engineering or naval engineering, which Glasgow was big for, etc. But how would you describe your country and your upbringing in your country in ways that would maybe change our perception or educate us a little bit? Because you know already what a lot of the things Brits automatically think about Norway and Norwegians.
Well, I think it's quite interesting when you see the soul of a nation, we see the thoughts of a nation. When you see, for example, Norway not part of EU, we were always having a big discussion go into NATO after the Second World War. And it's quite interesting. One of the most famous author in the world, called Henrik Ibsen, is a Norwegian. And he traveled away from Norway because he didn't like that kind of small country way of thinking, which is normal. So what you can say about Norway is we're only 5 million people. But if you take Norway and turn it around, I mean, geographically, it's from Oslo to the most northern point. Then we go to Rome the other way. So if you can imagine that Norway is so much more. We are a coast nation, which means that we have always had adventurers, going back to the Vikings, going back to the people who went to America, like the Irish especially did in the beginning of the 19th century. But sometimes the bad thing about Norway, I did 12 years abroad, I travel a lot. So I think then I have a way of seeing all the good things about Norway, the good thing that we tend to look after each other. It's possible to have an overview because we don't have a lot of people, we had a lot of space. On the other hand, after we got to oil and gas in the 70s, and I'm a son of a oil captain, so this is a part of my legacy. But after that, I mean, we have sometimes too much confidence. We think that, as you're saying, I don't think people in the UK or in Germany or I know that they don't know a lot about Norway, but we kind of feel that everybody knows about us. I guess that's why we have enough money to buy any country, to be a typical Norwegian. So we are very open, and sometimes, in my opinion, a bit naive, but that is also our strength. We are a bit naive. We tend to solve things. And during the Second World War, Norway was very important because of our coast. And that's why the first battles of the second, I got a little dog here, so that's why the sounds are coming up. That is little Beck's.
Hello, little Bex.
The Beckham. Now, so we are very proud of our World War nation, and as everybody else, we use that to kind of build our story. But we were always linked to Western. We are very close to UK. We are very close to USA. But at the same time, we are one of the few countries of our atmosphere that we have a border to Soviet Union and then later to Russia. So I think that is kind of created this middle position, and that's why the Norwegians always try to be involved in peace missions and all that, because we are a small nation with a lot of money, so we will always be invited, and people know that we can't do a big thing, but we can kind of contribute to those things. I'm a very proud Norwegian. But I'm also a very proud European. So, and I've lived in 4 different countries. And when I was in Austria, I was we lived in England, I lived in Germany, and that is also a part of my personality. So I would say that that's one of the reasons I love traveling around.
I wish to fuck on the basis of these 20 minutes that you were our Prime Minister in Britain in that case, because you'd be doing a damn sight, but you're fit for purpose.
My parties during the pandemic, so I couldn't.
Look, I'm going to be the worst type of interviewer, and possibly a sort of 1970s BBC light entertainment guy. By picking up on your bets reference, I was going to ask a different question. I was going to show you my pain, my disgust about the winning goal you scored in Vienna to knock Aberdeen out of Europe, which still lives with me to this fucking day. But nonetheless, because you mentioned Bex and because you mentioned peacekeeping, I have to go to one of our socios. We've got socio members who've stuck with us for 6 years and who are loyal and are our friends and they're like season ticket holders. And Tom Lee is one, a really interesting, articulate, widely read guy like you. And Tom Lee says, "Hi, Graham. Jan started in what was a febrile game between Swindon Town and Manchester United way back in March '94. What are his recollections of that day?" And this is where Tom has his tongue in his cheek, I'm sure. Especially the moment everybody remembers, namely Eric Cantona accidentally stepping on John Moncur and unfairly incurring a red card. The tableau, the sketch pad is yours, Jan. It was your experience, and you've got a dog named after a Manchester United player. So what else can I do except for go to Swindon versus Manchester United?
Yeah, it was a great game. I mean, when I kind of sum up my football career, I would love to have played for Liverpool or Manchester United or Chelsea, one of the big clubs. But I've been fortunate still in my career to play for 2 clubs in English football who had just 1 year in the Premier League, and I was there. That was Swindon Town and Barnsley. So when I came to Swindon, I mean, you can imagine, and you see some of those clubs still when Bournemouth are up and things like that. Brighton now coming back to the top table, and you can just imagine the proudness of these clubs being in the Premiership. And the ultimate game was, of course, against Manchester United, and the ultimate game play them at home, because then you think you had a chance, and that was a fantastic game. The game ended 2-2, by the way. I've scored a goal. Luke Nyholt, the Dutch friend of mine, scored the other one. But it's like you said, remember for the Eric Cantona, what he stamped at John Moncur, and this was a period of Eric Cantona's career that he got a lot of red cards. I think that he just got one the weekend after, and then got a big suspension. But it was funny because I remember this happened. County ground is a small, intimidated, very intimate football ground, and people went ballistic because he did that. And so I went over, and I was, one of my strengths in my career, I was always seeing things from outside, if I try to explain that, because I was never involved in a fight or anything. I was seeing that, and I was a part of it. So I nearly started laughing because I thought I was because people were like fighting in and around, but Cantona standing there with, as I remember, with his shirt. So the calmest boy in town, just waiting, of course, getting a red card, sent off, went through the county ground gate, which was one of the tightest, smallest gates of them all. So great day, 2-2. I remember another thing for that game because I scored against Peter Schmeichel, which was quite cool because I met Peter a couple of times and I made introduction to him on television. I've always said that you probably won more titles and all the people I know put together, but I still scored against you, my friend. And but after the game, Swindon started as the youngest team, one of the youngest team in the Premiership. But then John Gorman brought in Laurie Sanchez, Neil Webb, Terry Fenwick, Brian Franklin. So we were like the company team of an elderly home in Swindon.
And Frank McAvenny.
Yeah, exactly. Frank McAvenny, yeah. And what a man he was. One of the funniest guys I've ever played with. Fantastic character. And yeah, so after the game, Laurie Sanchez came to me. We did 2-2, which was good for us. And then he said to me, Jan, was it you or me scoring the goals? This is the goal. And I said, fucking hell, how old are you? You can't even remember a game? so that was a great experience.
Look, it might be too soon, but I'm gonna venture out on a branch because, you know, a friend that you played with, and a friend that you stay closely associated with now, Haaland, had his career really, if not finished, and badly curtailed by a man that you played against that day, Roy Keane. And I just wonder, given that you're an intelligent man, an open-minded man, a thinking man, how would you sum up your experiences of playing against him, seeing him as a fellow player, watching him now as a pundit, seeing the vendetta he had against your friend, what he did? What rounded description and picture do you have of that man?
Well, first of all, one of the best leaders that's the English or the British or UK football, because if you say Premier League football, I don't like that expression because they played football in England before Premier League. So, but one of the greatest leaders, one of the CEOs of Sir Alex Ferguson, what he did at Manchester United, a fantastic player who kind of developed his play because he had more to his game. That now we're just talking about the tough guy and everything, but he was involved in many goals as well. He was a great player, a great leader, and yeah, then he got those dark eyes sometimes. But I think that if you see football teams now around the world, what they're missing is a more his kind of player. And yes, the thing about him and Alfie was silly, absolutely silly of him to do that. And it's hard to because I played with a lot of Norwegians, and of course I felt big sympathy for Alfie at that time. And I had a knockdown affair with Roy Keane as well at Old Trafford. He just knocked me down. Or to be fair to me, I was standing, but the first guy I met after that was funny. We played, there was Middlesbrough against Manchester United. He knocked me down, and Brian Robson was my manager. And Brian Robson said, Jan, is it okay that you sign a letter that Roy Keane could get off the suspension a bit, and that he can maybe yes, that's no problem for me. I said, it's no problem. So I signed a letter that we sent to the Premier League or FA or whatever. And then we went on a holiday. And the first family we met was Roy Keane, of course. With his family there, and that was funny, and we just laughed about it. That is football. That's how football is like. And when I meet now Roy Keane then and again in Champions League, I probably always say the same joke: should I wear my shin pads or are we okay? And Roy Keane, a fantastic football player, a fantastic career. And what I like about him as a pundit, I like. He's a shooter. I don't like pundits who just say water is wet, tomorrow is another day, and at the end of the day. So Roy Keane, I would love to work with Roy Keane. So make this as an application from next season. Mike Chandler in Norway have the Premier League rights. I would love to have Roy Keane next to me. And my dream, I say you my dream, I would like to do the Manchester Derby with Alfie Haaland and Roy Keane next to me. I mean, that is my target. Let's see if I can do it.
And ladies and gentlemen, this is why Jan has arrived where he is. This is a rounded story now. Having talked about Norway as the peacekeeping nation, he's now put himself in between Alfie and Roy. You to quote De Niro, you're good. You're good. Look, we have sponsors called Bet365, and they've asked me to ask you, did you feel pressure being Middlesbrough's then record signing?
I felt more pressure when I came to Swindon, to be honest with you. I came to Swindon, they spent a lot of money on me, and I had a trouble when I arrived in English football. Got a knock in the first game, didn't adjust to the game, started losing my confidence, went 12 or 13 games before they put me on the bench. I felt I had to change my football career to find myself to be a good player, and I nearly ended my career then because I had to save my place for the 1994 World Cup. When I went to Middlesbrough, it was different because I came to Middlesbrough on a very optimistic time. There was 8 games left of the championship. They were number 1, and I came there. I never thought of that because then I had the confidence. I knew that I had arrived. I knew I could score goals in English football. I knew that I would fit into that team, and I was just hoping that I could be a part of that project that Steve Gibson and Brian Robson did. And as you said, I was a record signing. I came there in a very optimistic time. I played the last games on Ayresome Park, still passing Riverside Stadium, waiting for that first game we had against Chelsea, where I did a Buzz Aldrin goal. I scored the second goal after Craig Hignett. And now, so it was different when I came to Swindon. And Middlesbrough, I just felt I had the confidence. And then the rest of it was, doing as good as you can, being lucky, score some good. As a striker, you always feel, and especially after that Swindon experience, I was very eager to get the first goal because I felt as a striker, you need to have that first goal to get the pressure off you and get the criticism off you, so to say. And so to go to Middlesbrough at that time was a fantastic time to get there.
If you'll pardon me, because I know even thinking it, never mind saying it, this sounds stupid. But listening to your robust mentality and your ability to analyze, it's hard to think of you, although you famously spoke recently about the difficulties at Swindon and what it did to you, and what you came home and said to your wife, and how you spoke to your international teammate when he got carried off on a stretcher. All of these things, nonetheless, I find it hard to imagine you bereft of confidence.
Yes, I can understand that, but I think that one of the what I do privately is that I run my own communication company. So my company deliver analysis, and of course the 30% of my job is to do pitch side interviews, which is 200% of what people see I do. The reason I say that is that because I think that, and you will have probably realized it yourself, one of the keys to get good interviews and get people to talk is that you see beyond that kind of personality they like to sell you. And I can use an example. I can use Jose Mourinho. He's one of the, I love interviewing just Jose Mourinho because I know when he arrives, he knows he got, I'm not sure which Jose Mourinho he will try to give me today. Is it a humble one? Is it the guy who is a bit arrogant and blah, 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 blah? But I think that one of the reasons, and I could be a good example for you, as any other athletes, it's all about that fight in your head between the fire that either warm your house or burn it down. It's always there. And sometimes these professionals, they are so well trained that they don't talk about that. That's why I like to talk more to coaches than football players, because coaches open themselves more. A Thomas Tuchel, you can get to open. You can get a Jurgen Klopp to open. Also, Jose Mourinho open in his strange way, because when he has a go at me for not seeing a referee decision, I mean, I think that tells a lot about his personality. So I know that these players or coaches have the same trouble or they have the same ability to be nervous and lack of self-confidence that I do. Human beings are equal. To think that some human beings, just because of their status, just because how many goals they score, how many Ferraris they got, have a different personality,
that is bad analysis. And I had one great interview, one of the interviews I love to do, because he opened up, and there's not one who got maybe a great reach, but I had John Stone, the Manchester City defender, and he was one of the most promising young players in England. Then he had a period where he didn't play well, and then he came back and did well again. And this was a game at Old Trafford, and I think he has just scored a goal. So I asked him, John, I said, and John, try to explain that period you have to go through when you have, I guess, a bit lack of confidence that you, and he told me about that. And I love that, because I think that then he is a more role model for everybody else than the guy who say at the end of the day, and it's all about standing together and blah, 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 cliche. Because remember, I mean, to be a professional football player, I mean, there is so few, you can't even name it in percentage. Just see the players who are coming through in the academies in England. I mean, there's just a fraction. So for me, these football players, these football coaches are more role models in life than they are in football. And I wish more of them could kind of show that side of them. But that is up to us as well, Graham. We have to give them that credibility, that we're not only after them, we're not just going for them, and give them a stage to say that.
Well, you've touched on something that fascinates me, because not only do I watch you on video clips on YouTube, occasionally we're at the same games doing similar jobs. But what I noticed, the two things, one taken from what you've just said, and two, one that I watch, is that you very often are in that hotspot where you talked about the fire that can burn your house down or heat you. When you have to do an interview in what's called, in television terms, super flash, and it's the instant they come off the pitch, it's the first thing they're asked to do. Now, having been a footballer, I guess you understand a little bit more the mix of emotions, the fury. I'm a very volatile person. I'm afraid occasionally I'd be funny, occasionally I'd probably lash out and punch an interviewer, because I'm an idiot, but I'm also very hot-headed, and the perils of that moment are huge. And no matter how well thought out your question is, you can have a train crash because you're pressing a pressure point when they've had no time to decompress. That part of it, how do you prepare for that? How do you arm yourself against it? And are you completely invulnerable if somebody snaps, or if they walk off, or if they're rude? It just doesn't matter to you?
Absolutely. And I think that let's put it, I mean, the knowledge of the game, the knowledge of the footballer, the knowledge of the game, the knowledge of the coach, I mean, that is the basic. That has to be there. That is the kind of our platform of knowledge that need to be there. So if you have that, and then it's all about building up credibility, and you know it yourself. If you've been if you work with the same team or the same player and the same coach over many years, you kind of build up a credibility. And you tend to know them. For example, Jurgen Klopp, I've been in interview with him now for 12, 13 years. So he can be hot-headed, of course, but I can use him as an example, because I did Liverpool Arsenal the other day, and he came to the interview, and what I wanted to know from him was really, because he was attacked because they said Liverpool didn't take the cup seriously. And they said, and Jamie Carragher even started to say, maybe this squad should win more titles. And Pep Guardiola has been clever to win all these League Cups. So already in February, he got a League Cup trophy, and so on and so on. But what I wanted to ask Jurgen Klopp was, do you take this person personally? Because it goes on your ability to be a coach, because you tell your players, that trophy is not important. That is not important. Just calm down. But I knew when Jurgen Klopp, this was a 0-0 game. He was frustrated. They couldn't score. They didn't create
against 10 men.
Against 10 men, exactly. And to be fair to Arsenal with Saka, they had the biggest chance at the end there, and Alisson saved brilliantly. But then you have to wait. I wanted to understand what mood Jurgen Klopp is in. I want to see him in there. I have to respect that he is frustrated. And then there is you have the super flash and you have the flash. So super flash is straight when you go off the pitch. I would love to do that, but unfortunately, we don't have enough money to be that channel. So BT and Sky will do that. But then we get them. But still, they got that. And a lot of these managers, they're very emotional. For example, Conte. I mean, you can't have to find him. I think as an interviewer, you have to respect that, but still be sharp. But so for example, I think that I don't like interviews go with the first question, go big time in. I think that let's establish a stage, let's establish a bond between us. You can still say what went wrong today. Okay, describe your game. I always try to do the first question a bit calm to kind of settle it down. And I remember an interview with Conte, and Conte, I mean, he got a body language. I love his body language because he takes every emotional out of him. I mean, I love him because he looks like the most depressed man on the living earth. So I remember once at Stamford Bridge, he said to me, in his funny way, and I'm a foreigner too, so I can kind of make a parody of another foreigner speaking English. But he said, "For me, I did so many mistakes today. I can't believe I did it." And I was like, I was a bit again standing outside. What's my next question? This man, I want to take him to the doctor so they look after him. And then I managed to make my second question was, of all the mistakes you did, what was the worst? And I was afterwards, Jan, what were you doing? But again, Conte, being a football player, being a coach over many years, he answered it brilliantly. But I think that, Graham, it's all about the position you have. I have an advantage as well that I don't have to find the biggest news that should go into Sky News or some 24/7 news channel. So I can more or less try to present that. That is an advantage as well. I understand that it's harder for journalists who need that big headline. So, but I think to build up, I did that with Bayern Munich once. I said to my channel, they said, Jan, we want you to go to Santiago Bernabeu, do Real Madrid. And I said, no, I want to do Pilsen against Bayern Munich. And they said, huh? And why you want to do that? Yeah, because I want to show Bayern that I don't only go to the big games. I want to be there with the small games. And I when I look back now, I think that's the game I got most out of. I had a possibility to talk to every player, coaches. I was the only foreign interviewer. I spoke to Uli Hoeneß and all that kind of thing. So yeah, it's a lot of strategy in there.
That's it. So you exactly my point. You used a lot of strategy, and it links back to the remark you made in the previous answer about the media, the press. People like you, I'd like to feel exactly the same. We have to convince them we're not after them. Whereas a lot of our colleagues, a lot of people in the profession do go after a reaction. They want to make themselves famous, or frankly, we have a lot of colleagues who are sheep and just go blah, first thing that comes into their head, or what they think they should be saying, or they're mean, or they'll poke to get a reaction. And you know, the fact that you apply strategy to the Victoria Pilsen decision to go to Bavaria is super smart. But I also would like you to paint a picture of what the conditions these coaches are in to our listeners, because I know interviewers who work for various different channels, particularly in Britain, who speak to Pep, for example, quite regularly, and they don't enjoy him. They don't like him. They think that he's deliberately provocative. They think that he'll say, what, pardon, when he fully understands, and he'll just put in a face, I didn't understand it when he did it. They feel put off. And I often argue, look what we do to these managers. Well, Champions League maybe slightly less, but in the Premier League, they go from stall to stall to stall. They probably, when they're fiery and they might have lost or drawn, or they might have seen a player injured or disputed a decision with the referee, and we squeeze and we squeeze and we squeeze about 10 radio channels, 10 TV channels, same fucking questions. What do we expect from them except for them sometimes to get bored or snappy? And when 3/4 of the colleagues, in my opinion, having listened to a lot of them in different countries and different stadia, don't put any strategy or work in, we're often rude and we're boorish, and not everybody's as talented as you. You must see my point that I can often understand when a manager is boorish or snappy or stumps off. Can you?
Yes, I think that is a very good observation. And I think in terms of Pep, yes, it's harder to get a good interview out of him because but I think that is more down to the personalities, the human beings and the different coaches. You see that Jurgen Klopp, what Jurgen Klopp would be a speech in some with 300 people. He didn't need a sheet of paper. He will entertain everybody. And then there are other people like Pep Guardiola. He is another way. He's another personality. And yes, I think that one of them, without using Pep Guardiola there, but I think there is a very small distance between being arrogant and having no confidence. So there is ways that you kind of mask that kind of lack of confidence. And I think that when we expect that every coach should be fantastic in the media, as you saying, going maybe do 6-7 interviews, being more or less asked the same question, and you more or less give the same answers. There are people who have that more naturally into their confidence. And I used that as I was a player. I played with Mini Jakobsen, a little guy that played for Rosenborg, that we played in the national team. If we went from the bus, this is the happy 90s when there were no advert posters, we just made interviews and there was no timing, we just did them. So when we went from the bus to training, and I could make 4 interviews, he could do 5. When we came on the pitch, we both had forgotten that we did those kind of interviews, yeah. But another player like Øyvind Leonardsen or a Stig Inge Bjørneby who didn't like that kind of, then maybe that will weaken their training because that drained them. And so you need to respect that the managers have different angle to that part of their job. Do I think that is a vital part of their job? Yes. Do I think that the coaches are the most valuable ambassadors for the club? Absolutely. But I think that we should never, yes, I've had my things with Guardiola. I've had my things with him that he just said yes. And I tried again and he said yes again. And he just said yeah. So I've been there, but I always respect the way the pressure is on them. I never wanted to be a coach, but I was the managing sporting director of Lillestrøm, which is my club in Norway, and the coach was fired, so I had to take the team for 6 games, and I always said to the coach, behave, don't run through the motions, and blah 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 blah. First game away in Sweden against Jurgen, after 50 minutes, I already threw a chair into some wall, so I so understand them.
I do love your self-analysis and your honesty. I'm going to give a throwaway one now, and you can knock it out of touch or tell me I'm an idiot. How much do you fucking hate the Austrian Cup final?
Good question. I played cup finals.
How many of them?
Yeah, I played 3, lost them all. The first one, 1-0 up. Hans Krankel, the famous goal getter, took me up in the 92nd minute to let me celebrate to be the match winner of the cup final. In the 93rd minute, Austria Vienna, our main rival, equalized 1-1. We played the extra half without strikers. We lost 3-1. Then we lost against Stockerau, who was like, I mean, I can't start how big favorite we were. We lost 2-1. And my last game in Austria was against Tyrol, which I had a good team, but still we lost. I scored a goal again, but that was my last game in Austria. So yes, to be a Vizemeister, the vice champion of Austrian Cup, is not. I don't think I have the trophies. I still don't think I have them because the second medal they just get on my ass at the end.
Your man, I think he was a defender. I don't know if I pronounce his name right. Flickle. He loved a red card.
Yeah. They were all
loved the red card.
Absolutely, and there were things all over the place. And the Austrian, I would love to have one of those trophies. Just give me one of them, please. So
as far as this interview series is concerned, you are a meister of the. But
it was funny because I'm so old that this was before Bosman. So that means that to be able to leave Rapid Vienna could just hold me there without a contract. I mean, it was a terrible situation, and I didn't have a contract. So, but in a week before the cup final, I did my own arrivals, a departure. So I made a lot of last goodbye interviews, Auf Wiedersehen interviews, and it went so far because I thought that I had to put pressure on Rapid Vienna because they had to let me leave. So I remember when we lost against Tyrol, we went up and got the silver medal. And the Bundeskanzler, the prime minister, he said to me, well, Jan, he said, all the best in your new club. And I was thinking, okay, my theater this week has worked. That's when a Bundeskanzler think I will leave as well. So, and then I went to Swindon.
Look, I look at you talk about Lillestrøm being your team, but I look at the days of Stabæk, if I've pronounced it even vaguely properly, and I look at Sunday, 29 April 2001, and I see you beating Strømgodset and beating a fella called Hans Erik Odegaard.
Yes.
And you played with Alfie. And look, our sponsors again, Bet365 ask, can Haaland and Odegaard and their ilk at the moment lead Norway to their first World Cup this century in the near future? Are things besides those two individual talents beginning to look more positive for you?
It's getting more positive, and we have a good national coach in Ståle Solbakken, who was at Copenhagen, didn't have a lot of success in Köln and Wolverhampton, but did well for Copenhagen. So I like the way he's the same generation as me. He was a part of that 90 team that were good. So what I like about him, he looks for the types of players. The problem in Norway is that you're a small country, meaning that you have to have every year of developing players. So the 2001 generation, the 2002 generation, you need one or two players from each year, so to say. And another thing is that you need different type of players. So when you mention Erling Haaland, he's world class. Martin Odegaard is doing fantastic for Arsenal now, growing into his role that we have expected him to do. But they are offensively, they are playing going forward. And the last years, in the 90s, we had so many good defenders. I mean, Alan Johnson, who played for Chelsea, player of the year at Chelsea, played there for 9 years. He couldn't even get into the team. So we had great central defenders. That was historically one of the Norwegian things that we had. But now we don't have a lot of good defenders. So the balance of the team is not perfect at the moment. So he tried to look for players. He tried to get defenders in there to take that next step. So it's still going to be a struggle to get to the different championships.
You mentioned Ståle Solbakken, and he was also a man who fell out pretty spectacularly with Pep Guardiola on the touchline, but not with an interview at the end of Copenhagen, Barcelona. I think, yeah, I'd be interested if it's okay. I don't want to ask you about young Haaland's future.
You can ask me about anything. I enjoy it. So you just keep on going.
Well,
ask me anything.
One of the things that fascinates me is it's clear that he's very special. And there's three things I think are very special. One of which is not unheard of, in that he's a great physical specimen. The other two things, it appears to me, is there aren't many finishers in recent times who finish as instinctively, as naturally as he does. And that's something that sticks out to me, because I don't know, but you probably do know, whether it's trained or innate, but his knowledge of when to strike the ball that will give the goalkeeper the least ability to move. It's not always about power. It's very often about quick finishes, first time finishes, or putting the ball where the keeper is just half an inch off balance. That's a very special thing that he's got. And I think it's usually found in smaller strikers. You could immediately think of Jimmy Greaves or Romario or Bebeto or Messi. And yet he's got this beautiful combination of being a genuinely marvelous physical specimen, but with that knack in front of goal, which is not all about power.
Yes, good. Again, good analyze. And the thing is that I'm not one of those. I love my football. My wife will say I'm a football nerd, but I'm not. But I'm nerdy about scoring goals, because I did that myself. That was my passion. I love scoring goals. And when I see Erling, first of all, the physical attributes are there. You see that. Remember, he gained 8 kilos after he came to Dortmund. That was after he scored 10 goals for Salzburg in the Champions League. So he has gained weight, and he's in the period of Terzic, who was the interim coach, he made him better in the way that he He got the ball, he could turn, play the other guys in. That is one thing. Secondly, now he's also getting a bit better header of the ball. That is point one. He's scoring goals with his header, and they're also doing more crosses, which is good for him. But the thing is, the nerdy thing about him is, first of all, what you're saying there about his finishing. As you're saying, yes, he can do the odd great goals like he did against Schalke or he did against PSG in the Champions League. But normally it's his runs to take him on the goalkeeper, and he always find the goalkeeper standing on his wrong foot. Gerd Müller said once, if I start thinking, it's too late. And it's a great quote, but Gerd Müller, what Gerd Müller said in that statement is that it's a part of training, because he's so many times in same positions in training, because you want to score goals in training, and goal getters do that. I had an aim all training, all football session. I should be the goal getter of 6 against 6. If we play 7 against 7, I wouldn't be a goal getter. 5 against 5, I should go score most goals. But Erling Haaland also got this ability to, his runs are unbelievable. I mean, it's very underestimated when we describe his skills, because first of all, the boy nearly never goes in offside, which is amazing. Secondly, the way he creates his space, he takes a away movement to create his space, and then he goes into that space immediately. And then when you have player like Sancho or Bellingham or Hazard or Royce next to you, they find that space, and that is unbelievable. And another thing is with him, which is not even two things really. Nerdy again. He's Norway and a nerdy department. It's very seldom that you see a player enjoy other players scoring goals that he does. He's unbelievable. He loves the goals. When another player scores the goals, he is as happy when he scored the goals himself, which is an unbelievable skill to have as a goal getter, because a goal getter, per definition, is a bit selfish.
It's a Benzema skill. Erling may go on to be more, maybe, eventually, than Karim, but he embodies exactly what you're describing in Erling.
Yeah, and the thing is that if you have that ability, then you also got the passes back, which is also good for them, because they will give the pass back, and they will enjoy themselves when Erling scores or Karim scores. And the second thing is that there are a lot of strikers who score goals, but there are also a lot of strikers who misses many chances. Erling, knock wood, nearly never misses a chance, which is quite interesting, because I will never ever compare him with him, because he got to many more chances that I did, because he has other physical attributes. But that was one of my skills as well. I maybe didn't come to all these chances because I wasn't quick enough or I wasn't strong enough, but I never hardly missed a big chance. And that tells me, when I see Erling, that Erling is one who worked very hard on his details, very hard on his positioning, and I know that the boy, he's working 24/7 to improve, and also that thing. And I'm so old that I was sitting with my FF and Rev on the video recorder and see Gary Lineker's run, why was he always on his own when he got the ball? But Erling has that skill that he always tend to be in the right position. And when you see the goal stats he's having now, you know that the defender will look for him all the time, but he still managed to do that, as he did in this weekend. 2 typical Erling Haaland goals, because he created that space for himself.
I wonder, Jan, and we'll pull to an end, but I wonder, it's, I'm lost in admiration for watching a guy of that age do so well in 2 foreign countries at a high level, both with teams that are strong, but they're not necessarily the blue ribbon team of that nation, necessarily. At any rate, one of the things that's clear is that unless he and Mbappe choose to sign for the same club this summer or next summer, I don't care when it is, but there's a possibility that both of them move this summer. Unless they do, there is an inevitability that the media and sponsors and fans are going to say, great, super, that's our next 10 years of an equivalent to Messi versus Cristiano Ronaldo. We want and I wonder, personality-wise, will Erling try to reject that, which I think is like trying to push the ocean back? Does he have the character, the personality to enjoy that extra unnecessary razzmatazz, which I think is going to be forced upon both of them? I genuinely do think that that's just about inevitable. I don't mean can he cope, but can he thrive? Will he dislike that? You explain his personality a little bit to us.
Well, first of all, to compare anyone with Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo is very, very unfair, because I love my football history, and you can make a very, very big case for Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi being the best players ever around, and not at least for so many years. So you can have Puskas in the 50s, maybe, fantastic, Di Stefano, go back there. If you take it after the Second World War, you can have Johan Cruyff, Franz Beckenbauer. But if you see how many years Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo has done that, is like unbelievable. I mean, there is nothing that you compare with in the football history. Maybe Pelé from 58 to 70s, but then he had the 7 or 8 years where he kind of played in Santos and he played in New York Cosmos. So, I mean, to compare them with the two of the best players in the world is very unfair, but still people will do that. The funny thing, I think, with Mbappe and Cristiano Ronaldo, about Erling Haaland, is that they are both, I think the reason we like them so much is that they are kind of cartoon characters. They have some special personality. I was fortunate. I think one of the first interviews in English with Mbappe, and he was like, he came forward as a 9-year-old. I mean, I loved him, his love of the game and so on. And then there be things that happened late the last years, but now he seems to be back. But he's a world champion, still a world champion. So, I mean, Erling Haaland will never be, unfortunately, a world champion. But I think that the two of them, the reason they could tackle that kind of position is that they are these characters. I always end up asking Erling when I have the chance, how do you cope with the pressure? How do you block it out? How do you manage to score against Freiburg when everybody talking about Real Madrid, Barcelona, Manchester City, or Chelsea, or whatever? And I think that you saw that with Mbappe as well. He had stages in his career where you saw he didn't look so happy, and then he came back again, trying to do well for PSG and everything. So yes, I think they could do. I would have loved to see them in the same team. I think that, and that is just my personal thing. I think that I always said that Mbappe movements will be a bit key to what happened to Erling Haaland, because if he goes to Real Madrid, will they then consider that they play with Benzema, Mbappe, and Erling Haaland? And then they have some other young kids as well at Real Madrid who are fantastic. But still, it's quite interesting, and somehow they are different as person, but still very similar to characters. So I think that we will enjoy them for many, many years. And I think that sometimes I know the team Haaland much better than the team Mbappe, but something is quite forgotten by Haaland. Look the way he has chosen his clubs. There's always been sensible choices. There's always been a sensible dad who has talked about development, going to Salzburg instead of Juventus, going to Dortmund instead of the big English clubs, and so on. So I'm not afraid of them. They have built a great team around Erling.
It's guest's choice to finish. I'll give you 3 subjects. I know that when Steven Gerrard was at Liverpool, he showed young Martin Odegaard around the training ground, phoned him up, encouraged him. Odegaard was a Liverpool fan. It didn't happen. Subject 1. Subject 2, I just need to say the miracle of Eintracht Frankfurt in the last 3-4 games of relegation, or Jurgen Klopp, the singer. Now, you can choose. It's multiple choice. I have time, so I can do small comments on each. Can I do that? Yes.
Okay.
Best answer.
First of all, Martin Odegaard, you're now sitting in my home office, somewhere behind me, somewhere. I'm not sure. I could take a sheet of paper. When Martin Odegaard was 16, him and his dad were sitting in my living room. I was the then team manager of the Norwegian national team. I was here with him, a national coach, his dad and myself. And we were to discuss which clubs he should go to. Of course, the final decision was his. But I took a sheet of paper and I made 1, 2, 3, 4 because it was Arsenal, It was Arsenal, Liverpool, Bayern Munich, and Real Madrid. And I made 1 to 4 what I thought he would think. And I did it a bit dramatically before the meeting started. They were sitting there, and the young kid was 16. So I made 1 to 4, and I said, and I also do 1 to 4 what I mean you should do. And that was funny. And we were sitting here, and yes, he was a Liverpool fan, and of course that was very attractive to him. At the end of the day, it ended up that we managed to make a scenario where he was a developer of the game. He was a pupil of football, and he was great in the subject football. So the subject football, you had to find a college who fitted you best to your college. And that college, of those 4 teams, there were only 1 team who had a second team, and that was Real Madrid. And the head coach of that team was Zinedine Zidane. So at the end of the day, I think that was Martin could confirm it or not confirm it, but I think that was the final thing that made him go to Real Madrid. Having said that, I remember I said also dramatically, my main argument, you can't say no to Real Madrid. It's not possible. But,
what was your 1, 2, 3, 4? How did you write on the paper?
I'm not sure, but I had Real Madrid at the top, and for that reason, because I did my homework. Because on Bayern Munich, I remember at the time they put a lot of pressure on me because they knew me through German football, and they said that he has to choose us. And Pep Guardiola, when I met him in his training camp, he was like, I give him to me. I'm making the best player in the world, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, the main thing was for him to play football. And he was 16 years of age, and people were too impatient that he should play straight away. I guess he still is the youngest player who ever played for Real Madrid, but that has nothing to do with the case. And he has arrived now. And I know American football, and there are a lot of late bloomers. And in the USA, you should be good when you're 22, 23. So I think that Martin will do well. With Eintracht Frankfurt, that is... the last 4 games of the season, we are hopelessly away from a safe place in Frankfurt or in the Bundesliga. And we played Werder Bremen away, we won. We played Dortmund at home, we won. And suddenly, so okay, there may be a chance, but we're playing Schalke away from home, 65,000, 2-0 down. I touched the ball once, that made it 2-1. To halftime, we had a legendary coach called Jörg Berger, who was just standing there saying, easy boys, we were going to win this 3-2. And we were thinking, we haven't touched the ball, coach. We haven't touched the ball. Of course, we're ending up winning 3-2. And before the last game of the season, we played Kaiserslautern with Otto Rehhagel. They needed a draw to get a Champions League. And as it turned out, the papers, at the end of the season, they always make these different alternatives saying everything that can happen. And then, you always have a drawer where you say the impossible thing that could happen, but still could happen, but it won't happen anyway. But that didn't happen either. We went to the next draws. So I scored, as you said, the winner in the 92nd minute, 5-1. We had the same goal difference as Nürnberg, but we scored more goals, which I guess made me have a lot of...
4 more goals.
Yeah.
Christoph Westerhalter comes on, 86 minutes, and gives you the assist for the goal to go 5-1, to keep Eintracht up and to thrash, as you said, the mighty Rehhagels, Kaiserslautern.
They had a good team, and then the last thing with Jurgen Klopp singing, and I think that you can identify very much what happened the 30 minutes before that singing, because there were like all channels in the world wanted to speak to Jurgen Klopp. He had done all his super flash outside. He has probably had his wife and kids and cousins and whatever on the pitch. It takes so ages in Champions League to get to interviews. And I worked very hard with UEFA to get him first, because I said, and he was an Italian guy, so I kind of appealed on his Italian side. And I said, look around you, who has been here in every game of Liverpool's campaign? And he said, it's probably you, Jan. And he said, yes, that is true. Who else standing here has worked with Jurgen Klopp for 12 years? And he said, it's probably you, Jan. And then Jurgen Klopp came up the stairs, and I hugged him outside the camera and congratulated him. And then the Liverpool guy said, you can go to Jan. So, and then he sung this song, Let's Talk About Six, Baby, because that was the 6th time Liverpool. And he was unbelievable. Thank God I knew my role not to sing with him. And the aftermath of that, if I may, that I was finished, and it's happened of my 2,000 interviews. Once interview got missed in the sky. So when I do an interview now, I always think that will be missed in the sky. So I calling up my producer, have you got it? Have you got it? And he said, yes, we're waiting for it. Have you got it? And yes, we have got it. We just at an advert now. We're doing it. And I said, you have to show it. And I was standing there like this. I was standing, you have to do it. You have to do it. You have to do it. And then I was just waiting. I said, fuck off, they need to put it on, because I knew straight this will be a big thing. So then I saw all the SMS coming in, and I knew it was on. And the funny thing afterwards, my colleague who was standing next to me, I went back to him afterwards and said, how was Klopp with you? I was fantastic, wasn't it? I said it was quite normal. Okay, and that just shows Jurgen Klopp. He got so many different faces, and thank God for me, he did that singing face to me.
It goes beyond the trust, though, Jan, because what you've demonstrated over the last hour and a bit, and what I've seen when I watch you transfer from your professional career to a new professional career, and we haven't mentioned the number of times that Norwegian politics and Norwegian sport has leaned on you, asked you to help, asked you for guidance. You're a clever, articulate, strategic man, and that's why Klopp opened up. It isn't just the 12 years. It's about respect, and it's about liking somebody who's different and challenging. You've shown all of that to us today. It's generous of you. I need to own up to the listeners. I kept Jan waiting for half an hour. It's been a hell of a day. I had Darwin Nunez crying, not deliberately, in an interview immediately before this. So this has lifted me. It's been fantastic. I genuinely admire what you do. I think that you're more than a rarity. I think you're up in the really high stratosphere of those who handle the post-match interview with wit and entertainment. You've given that to us today. Thank you, Jan Fjortoft. Thank you very much indeed.
But I must first of all thank you for the nice words. And you're doing something, Graham, today that is very rare in our business and another business. And I salute you doing that. I know I was the lucky guy who got that from you. But I think that we are in our society to praise each other. When I see someone do something good, if there'd been another journalist, I can fight for something. He can get an interview that I don't get. I admire that, and I thank you for the very, very nice words, and thank you for your great podcast that you do anyway. And hopefully we can inspire some people to kind of praise each other, because we need that in our business.
It's nice to be nice when people deserve it, and what I said about you, I meant. Jan, thank you so much.